I'm Dr. Orion Taraban, and this is Psych Hacks, Better Living Through Psychology. And the topic of today's short talk is younger men and older women. So this episode is a response to some of the questions that were posted in the comments of my episode, Why Men Like Younger Women. Folks wanted to know, well, what about the opposite? What about when younger men enter into relationships with older women? What does that mean? What do you have to say about that? Well, it turns out I have a lot to say about that. But before I get into it, please remember to like this episode and subscribe to the channel. It takes less than a second, costs you nothing, and it's a great way to get the cougars to come running if that's what you're into. So do the thing. Back to it. So what does it mean when a younger man enters into a relationship with an older woman? Well, in the first place, it probably means that the man is young. This dynamic is much more likely to occur when the man is 25 and the woman is 40 than when the man is 40 and the woman is 55. So this kind of relationship, younger man, older woman, is kind of time-bound. It generally occurs when men are in their early 20s and women are in their late 30s, early 40s. And I gotta say, this arrangement has a lot to speak for itself. It can be a really good relationship, and I'm speaking from personal experience. When I was in my early 20s, I had a number of lovers in their late 30s, and I'm really grateful to these women. We had a fantastic time. They really helped me to become more confident in relationships, and I'm still on good terms with all of them today. I wish them all the best. So I would actually highly recommend this relationship to the young men out there. And there's a number of reasons why this dynamic can be really good for both parties. Let's go back to my handy-dandy graph on sexual marketplace values as a function of age, derived from the paper Aspirational Mate Selection and Online Dating Markets. Here it is. So, where are the young men? They are here. And where are the older women? The women in their late 30s. They are here. And would you look at that? And would you look at that? These two groups are on the same power level. How fascinating. And this kind of makes sense. There's nothing wrong with young men per se, but in general, women don't want them. They have no wealth or status or experience. And there's nothing wrong with older women per se, but in general, men don't want them. They're not as physically attractive as their younger competition. So what you have are two gendered classes at two different stages of their lives that are generally equivalent with respect to their normalized sexual marketplace values. So it kind of makes sense that they would find each other. Now, this dynamic, younger man, older woman, is really good for the short term, like a few years max. And that's because, on some level, both parties know that starting a family is probably not in the cards. And that works both ways. The woman probably isn't going to want to reproduce with a young guy in his early 20s who may not have a job or a career or much in terms of material prospects, and vice versa. The man probably isn't going to want to take on that kind of responsibility with a woman who's nearing the end of her biological window. So it's like both parties know that they're there really to enjoy themselves. Socially, we think that the older man, younger woman dynamic is primarily sexual. However, that's not the case. And that's because beyond the sexual element, both parties are actually in an ideal situation to reproduce and start a family. The conditions are at least ripe for that to happen, and there is a reality-based likelihood that it will. That's not really the case in a younger man, older woman dynamic, which typically is primarily sexual. These relationships are all about enjoying the pleasure of each other's company. And there are a few reasons why this dynamic lends itself to a sexual relationship so well. In the first place, a young man's libido is never gonna get higher. They're basically insatiable at that age. On the other hand, there's a lot of research that indicates that women's desire for sex tends to increase as they get older. So you have two people entering into a relationship with very high sex drives, if not the highest sex drives that they will ever have across their entire lifespans. Young men want to have sex, and older women often don't have the same hang-ups about sex that younger women do. So there's less game playing about it. And here's something else to consider. Men are just sort of expected to know what to do with a woman. No one's really supposed to teach him, and no one really does. He's just supposed to know. And when he doesn't, he can feel inadequate, and his partners, if he's fortunate enough to have any, can feel resentful. Young women in particular generally have neither the ability nor the inclination to teach men how to be good lovers. They can be extremely impatient, and they can get away with being extremely impatient. On the other hand, older women can have this patient, feminine energy about them that can help a guy learn without shaming or blaming him when he inevitably makes mistakes. And this, of course, can serve the woman in question as well, because she can sort of subtly guide him toward what works for her if she's willing to put in the time to do so. It can be a win-win relationship. And that's what I have to say today about younger men and older women. There's more, but I'll save that for another episode. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and thank you for listening.